Welcome to You Are the Love Story, the ultimate self-love and self-trust summit to support you in creating love, validation, and empowerment from the inside out. I'm your host, Jessica Lundgren, and today we have Yulia Azriel with us. Yulia is a life purpose clarity coach, award-winning speaker, and breathwork trauma healer who mentors coaches, energy healers, yoga teachers, and artists who struggle with self-doubt and second-guess their worth to trust themselves more, become more confident, and boldly share their gifts. Her calming presence and gentle divine feminine approach provide a safe space for students and clients to heal their traumas and learn how to trust their bodies again, connect with their innate vitality and joy, so that they can be the embodiment of divine love, expressing their soul's purpose to the world that needs them. It's Yulia's passion and life's purpose to help women reconnect to their sacred heart, align with their soul's true mission, and awaken the empowered goddess within so that we can collectively contribute to the healing of Mother Earth. Today, she's here to talk with us about 3 secrets to discovering love, journeying home through body, breath, and Yoga Nidra. Welcome, Yulia. It's so great to have you here today.
Thank you, Jessica. It's such a joy. I already feel like this bubbling feeling of
Oh,
lightness and joy being with you.
Oh, I'm so glad. I'm so excited for our conversation today. I have a lot of questions for you already about just even the title. So I'm curious to get started. But before we do that, I would love for you to share a little bit more just about yourself and your journey and how you got to where you are today, and maybe a little bit about the work that you do with women. So we would just love to hear more.
Absolutely. Yes, I'm happy to share. I think as for many of us who get to the place of service and supporting other people's empowerment and loving themselves, it started with ourselves, uh, learning how to do that for ourselves.
Hmm.
So for me, it started with for a really long time, I didn't love myself and I didn't feel worthy. There was this deep internal negative talk that I didn't even know that was internal self-talk, but I just felt there was something wrong with me, that I was broken,
Hmm.
that I didn't feel like I could measure up and try to do so many things, like getting degrees, trying to get validation from other people through external achievements. And it always kept me feeling empty
Yeah.
and lonely and isolated. And there was like, I'll never be able to get that feeling that I was looking for.
Hmm.
So that internal quest, like it led me all the way to PhD, and then I failed it. And then there was like this moment where I had to really face myself. And I went on a path of reconnecting with my body. That's what really helped me, is to start to get out of that rut of a story that I was telling myself that there was something wrong with me, and come into connection with my body and my breath and this internal feeling of peace and love that is a feeling. It's not something that like my mind could really comprehend.
Hmm.
So that was where it started. Started
Yeah.
about 15 years ago.
That's amazing. Yeah. And so then you started your own transformation, and now you're helping other women to make that same shift for themselves. Is that right?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. At first it was just me looking for my own sense of sanity and solve that internal feeling that there was something wrong with me. And
Mhm.
then it just became such a natural as soon as I started having that. Oh my gosh, I can't believe that I lived my most of my life without knowing who I am, that feeling of home
Mhm.
inside. And then I just couldn't, it just became natural for me to start to, even though I'm an extreme introvert, and growing up, I felt not very comfortable being in public or with
Mhm.
people. I always felt a lot more comfortable in nature, with dogs, with trees, with all kinds of critters. But when I really found that inside, it just became very natural for me to want to help. And
Mhm.
particularly with traumas, that I feel a lot of passion to help women heal deeply seated traumas that are still live in the body.
Mm. Yeah, such a great need for that. Well, I appreciate you being here and I appreciate the experiences that you've had that have brought you to this point to where you're able to share and help so many people. So thank you for that. And so our topic today, the three secrets to rediscovering love, journeying home through body, breath, and yoga nidra. I feel like there's so much to unpack
Mm.
with that.
Yeah.
But let's start with, it kind of implies this idea that we've stopped loving ourselves. And so why did we stop loving ourselves? Like in your experience, what have you found? And what are the consequences of that, of losing that connection with ourselves? What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah. Well, I think it's a universal pain
Mm,
that we disconnect from love, from the source of love. I think stop loving ourselves is really the result or the symptom of our disconnection from the source of love. I
mm,
feel like when we come here as we're born out of love, it's the source of love that we are all are coming from, and there happens a rapture of self somewhere early in life. It can even happen while we were in the womb.
mm,
A lot of the traumas that I work with there, even before birth or during birth or very early childhood, when
mm,
we're so impressionable, we even pre-verbal, but we receive imprints from our parents or environment or caregivers where we start to believe that we are separate.
mm,
And initially, when we're conceived, when we're in the womb, we are part of the universe.
mhm,
We're united with the universe. We're energy. We know we are just energy. And then becomes this separation, and the ego starts to develop where we start to believe that we are not somehow separate. And the different subconscious beliefs start to form.
mhm,
And a lot of times it happens through traumatic experiences. And what I mean by trauma is when event happened and we didn't have the resources to fully integrate the energetic impact of that event. So it begins to store in our body as some kind of a block
mm,
in our mind, and it's accompanied by emotional block and also a story or limiting belief.
mhm.
And we don't, most of those limiting beliefs, we're not aware that they're there. They're kind of like, I think of an ice, what is it called? Iceberg.
Uh-huh.
You can only see the top of it, and they say that only 10 or less percent of our thoughts we're conscious of. But
Mhm.
the rest is underground and we don't even know. And but they're the kinds of thoughts that are ruling and making us act in a certain way and creating our actions and perceptions of life. But we
Yeah.
don't know that they're there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so interesting. And the idea of trauma that even in the womb that can happen and that without being able to integrate that then creates these blocks in the body and the emotions. And so with that, that those subconscious beliefs, those unconscious beliefs that we have, that then affects all areas of our lives, right? Like our self-worth, our sense of identity. So, how do we start to unravel that? Like, how do we start this process of journeying home? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, that's such a beautiful exploration. Where is the entry point, right? Where do we start? I'll share for myself. There are many, I believe that there are many different entry points
Hmm.
into rediscovering who we truly are. For me, it started with meditation. I dove right in
Hmm.
without having any meditation experience. I went for 10 days of silent meditation.
Wow,
And I didn't
ambitious.
even know. Yeah, I know. But I needed to dive right in. For
Hmm.
some people, it's baby steps.
Hmm.
But what I see common, whatever path someone chooses, it's starting to develop mindfulness practice where we start to recognize that the thoughts and who we are is not the same.
Hmm.
Most people, whatever we think is believe that is that who we are.
Hmm.
Whatever thoughts we have about another person, we believe that that's what the other person is. But
Mhm.
to start to have that distance between the thoughts and the observer of the thoughts, that's the first step that I believe, is to
Mhm.
start to recognize that there is a reality beyond our thinking patterns.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I find it to be very helpful to reconnect with the body, because when we're in those thoughts, we're lost in those thoughts and stories, we're not really fully in the body.
Mhm. And so how do you help people to reconnect with their body? Like, what are some of those practices that we could explore or learn about or incorporate?
Yeah. So with the body, I mean like that we have different energy. We have an energy body, we have a physical body, we have emotional body. There are many different
Mhm.
bodies. The physical body is the most gross and um, visible and tangible. So it's a beautiful way to enter into connection with emotions also. And energy is through, even through touch. It's one of the ways, touching our body and just giving ourselves grounding, a sense of groundedness. Grounding is one of the powerful tools that I use,
Mhm.
because whenever there is this rapture of self, people become disassociated. They're not fully all the way down to their feet,
Mm.
not connected to the ground. And so doing practices where we can bring our attention, our mind all the way down into our feet is,
Mm.
and grounding, walking barefoot. And
Mhm.
yeah, so those are some of them. Of course, other there's so many. The yoga
Yeah.
practice is really brings us back into
Mhm.
connection. Tai
Yeah.
Chi, Qigong.
Interesting. All right. So, journeying home through body, breath, and Yoga Nidra. So, let's talk about each of those paths
Mhm.
and how they're connected, or what some ways that we can begin that journey in those different areas. Do you have, so like if we talk about body, so we've kind of talked about that a little bit already, like grounding in just our physical body, like just through touch. Um, what about our breath? Like, how does our breath come into play, and how is that connected to this idea of self-love and our relationship with ourselves?
Yes, beautiful question. I think like putting the breath as that in the middle of that question is perfect, because breath is, I think of the breath as the connector. It's the bridge. It's
Mm,
the bridge that connects our mind with the body. So the mind is more subtle and the body is more gross. And
mhm,
the breath is in between. We can feel the breath, and we can also, it's unconscious, but part of the breath we can regulate. We can consciously change the pattern of the breath. And the yogis say that for every mental and emotional pattern, there's a breath pattern that's is correlated to that.
mm,
And when we can change our breath, we can change our mental state, just like that.
mhm,
Just by learning how to breathe more regularly and
mhm,
deeply and more openly, where we breathe, the whole body can breathe. Because
mhm.
most people have certain kind of restriction and constriction and distortion in their breathing pattern. That became a result of the traumatic experiences, where we learned how to hold the breath and create protection for ourselves.
Right. Yeah, that's so interesting. And it makes me remember like a time where I was kind of going through some things in my own life. And I was just realizing, like, I'm just holding my breath. Like, I need to just remember to breathe, right? And just like consciously feeling like, okay, I just need to stop for a second and just actually breathe. And I still, even now, there's times where if I'm working really hard, or if I'm feeling really pressured, or really busy, my body just kind of instinctively does this big sigh, right? And
Yeah,
I'm like, oh yeah, I gotta remember to breathe.
yeah,
So yeah,
yeah,
that's really interesting, and just how changing our breath patterns can change our
yeah,
emotional experience. Yeah.
yeah. It can change our physiology and can change our psychology. And I love that you're aware when in the times of busyness or stressful situation, we all do this. We hold it.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
But And this is not natural. Babies don't do that when if
No.
there was no trauma prior to birth. And
Mm,
that's what my work is all about, is how to learn again, how to relearn so we can breathe easefully
mhm.
and be able to breathe through those challenging moments where there's a tendency to hold and constrict, because it's very connected. When we hold the breath, there's also constriction in the muscles.
Right.
There are muscles that regulate
Yeah.
the breathing, or
All the
shoulder.
tension in the shoulders, right. So what
Yeah.
are some practices that people could do to start to become aware? I mean, aside from just noticing that, like, are there some practices or something simple and practical that someone could put into place to start working on that, like the breath portion of it, since it is that connector?
Yes, yes, great question. One of the practices that I recommend to all of my clients is it's very simple. It's through the open mouth. It's different. So there are many, many different practices. There are through the nose, through the mouth. But one of the practices I use regularly is open mouth and visualizing a circle like this, starting at the pelvis and then moving up the back and then out in front of you on the exhale. And this is deeply relaxing because it involves your whole body. Some people even visualize starting at the feet and moving all the way up and down. So you're encompassing the whole body and
Mm-hmm.
giving the body, wherever there is a restriction, it starts to let go.
Mm,
And it can be emotional release that comes with it. There's
yeah.
all kinds of big releases that can happen.
And so what does that look like if there's an emotional release? Like what do people experience when if that happens? Like just
They,
like feeling
they,
some kind of emotion that you're not anticipating, like in that moment. Is that what that means?
Yeah, it can be just tears, and just all of a sudden tears can flow because everything is energy. And
Mm-hmm.
when we hold our breath and when we hold muscular tension, we're holding back energy. The energy somehow is not flowing freely. And
Mm-hmm.
when we start to breathe like this through the open mouth, what happened is we open the gates. Whenever there was a restriction, all of a sudden the energy starts to flow. And it can the way energy flows is very multiple different ways. It can feel like tingling, like hands might feel like it's all of a sudden buzzing, or
Mm-hmm.
warm or cold. It's other ways that energy is flowing. It can feel like tears or memories. Having memories or visions, it's another way that energy is moving. Some people can see colors,
Mm-hmm.
shift, all kinds of visuals. So there are many different. Some people starts to shake, like just shaking, and it's a way that energy wants to be dispersed from the body because it was held, and the breath helps to let that energy start to disperse. And it's a beautiful thing because when the energy starts to flow, what it does is that restricted energy that was held back
Mm-hmm.
starts to go back to source.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when that feeling of coming home and ease and love returns to us.
Mm. That's beautiful. And I appreciate you sharing that so that if somebody's trying this and they experience like the shaking or some of that, to not be alarmed, that that's normal. It's not, doesn't have to be a scary thing, that that's just the energy moving and releasing those blocks and
Yeah.
bringing us home. So that's
Yeah.
really cool. I appreciate that. And so talk to us about Yoga Nidra. I don't know anything about that, so I'm very curious about that and how that is part or can be a part of our journeying home in this rediscovering love. Like, what part does that play? What is it?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for asking that, Jessica. I love that, like I get to explain from the beginner's perspective. I love that. Like if you've never heard of Yoga Nidra, so what it is, I'll divide it into first starting with the name. Yoga means union,
Mhm.
and Nidra means in Sanskrit means sleep. So
Mm,
what Yoga Nidra is a psychic sleep, or the kind of sleep that returns you to your knowing of the union or
mm,
wholeness within yourself, and union and wholeness with everything, with everyone.
mm,
Knowing yourself as a important part of the whole. Like
mhm.
Every person is an important spark of the divine.
Yeah.
So Yoga Nidra, what it does, it's a consecutive progressive relaxation technique. It's a meditation. Yoga Nidra is a sleep-based meditation. And for most people, sitting and meditating is challenging.
Hmm.
It's challenging for me because our minds kick in and it's hard to turn off the mind.
Hmm.
And also, a lot of times the body feels uncomfortable just sitting.
Hmm.
And so, what Yoga Nidra is, it's a lying down. Ideally, the person can lie down on the floor and be in the most comfortable position.
Hmm.
And it's a guided meditation where a person who is receiving it is going through progression of progressive relaxation. And it's a sleep meditation because we enter a sleep-like state. You know, like before you fall asleep, you're in this twilight zone where
Yeah.
you're very relaxed.
Hmm.
It's in that moment where you're also most receptive to change,
Hmm.
to reprogram the mind.
Mm.
And what's beautiful about Yoga Nidra, it's guided. You don't need to do anything. And when you enter into that deeply relaxed state, in that moment, we plant a seed of your new resolution or intention.
Mm.
How you want to be with yourself, if you want to deepen your love for yourself or change a habit. You can plant any intention of where you want your life to move in the
Hmm.
direction.
Oh,
And
that's
then,
amazing.
yeah, it's like it's truly reprogramming your subconscious mind, but in the most gentle and easeful way, and it feels incredibly restorative. It's a deeply rejuvenating practice where most people come back from it feeling like they not just slept. Actually, 45 minutes of Yoga Nidra equals to 3 hours of deep sleep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Does it always have to be guided, or is it something you can do yourself without
Mostly
being
it's
guided?
guided. It's
Okay.
guided because the reason why it's guided because at some point, like it's like progression of letting go and letting go. And at some point, the mind is not thinking at all. The mind is gone.
Mm-hmm.
The body and the subconscious is receiving the voice and the depth of where this voice is coming from on a very deep, not mentally, but energetically. It's like osmosis. We
Mm-hmm.
receive that the whole being receives, not the mind. That's why you can't really go that deep without being guided.
Yeah.
That's how it's different from other types of meditation.
Right. That's really interesting. I'll definitely have to explore more about that. That's very intriguing. And I love that it's lying down as well, because I know for me, my back starts to hurt. And I know that people that are really into meditation, that's part of the challenge, right? Is like learning to overcome your body's
Mhm.
complaints about the situation. But that sounds really appealing and very interesting. And I'm sure incredibly effective, right? At helping to, like you're saying, planting those seeds for really deep internal change instead of, just trying to force ourselves
Yeah.
to be
Yeah.
a certain way. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really interesting and exciting. So, all right. So, how do we like is this something that like how does somebody find a guided meditation like that? Is it something that they can just do like a Google search? Is it like how do you find something like that?
There are lots and lots of yoga nidras on YouTube, and I
Mm.
come from the lineage that I think that it goes deeper than I've tried many different styles, and it's up to the person. Yeah, there are lots of them on YouTube, and I'll offer the gift to your community to the summit, specifically around self-love. That's where we plant that intention
Mhm.
with self-love.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there are many trainings in Yoga Nidra. I also offer a training for someone to become certified in Yoga Nidra, how to guide others.
Oh, that's exciting. All
Yeah.
right. Well, you mentioned it here briefly. So why don't do you want to tell us a little bit about that gift that you have? And then we'll jump back in because I do have a few more questions, but it seems like that's a good spot to kind of talk about your gift that you have.
Yes, yes. The gift is Yoga Nidra. It will be guided. And the theme of it is I love myself just as I am.
Mm.
That will be the intention that we planned, that will be planted in that Yoga Nidra. And it changes your relationship with yourself. It changes your beliefs about who you are on the level that your mind cannot understand.
Hmm.
It's really incredible because it's not the mental. The mind only lives in the superficial dimension, but this goes deep into the subconscious and your whole being receives this.
Hmm. That sounds amazing. So thank you for that. That's really generous, and I'm very curious about that myself. So everyone will be able to get that at the link that's on your particular speaker page. But do you have, so it sounds really powerful. Do you have any examples of how this has affected somebody that's used it? Like what the benefit, how it's affected them and changed their life? Do you have any examples that you can share with us about that?
Yeah, I have so many. I have so many, I call them miracle stories.
Yeah.
It's like, and it's so beautiful because I don't do that. When I guide people through the Yoga Nidra, I need to also get out of the way and release the feeling that I am the one who is doing it. I'm
Hmm.
just the channel. You know, the energy comes and it comes through my voice. And I'll share one miraculous moment that I got to witness with Yoga Nidra. There's so many. It can happen on every level. It can happen on the physical level, actual physical healing happens, or it
Mm,
can happen on emotional level where there were deep-seated emotions that were stored and the person didn't even know what they were and
mm,
how they were holding them back in
mhm,
life. And it also can happen on a very deep spiritual level.
mm.
So I'll share one that
Yeah.
was very measurable
Hmm.
example. It's like scientifically measurable by doctors. So
Wow.
I had a client who was coming to me regularly, and I was guiding her through Yoga Nidra, and we were working on some relationship issues that she was having
Hmm.
with her partner. So that, and also that was connected to her childhood, the wounds and
Hmm.
traumatic experiences. In that Yoga Nidra, when she came back from that experience, she told me that she felt, and in Yoga Nidra, you can feel very, very strong sensations moving through your body. And she just felt like it was a stream of energy going into one of her teeth.
Mm.
Like it was like going right into the tooth. And she didn't tell me ahead of time that she was going through um, implant
Oh.
surgery. So she was doing an implant for her
Mhm.
tooth. And she was going to the dentist, or what do you call it? Periodontist.
Yeah.
Periodont. And they, you know, it has to be, the implant had to root
Hmm.
for them to continue with the procedure. And she kept going for several weeks and it wasn't rooting. So it was, they were measuring the numbers and it wasn't healing. So they were telling her if in another week it won't happen, we'll have to start all over from the
Oh.
beginning.
Hmm.
And after this experience, she just felt it when that energetical sensation went straight into the tooth where that implant was trying to grow.
Hmm.
She just felt it very strongly. And a few days later, she went to her dentist and they measured and they said, well, it's amazing. It's just that
Oh.
the numbers increased or whatever that shift was,
Hmm.
that they didn't need to start from the beginning. And they
Wow.
were able to continue with that implant.
Yeah. That's amazing. Hmm.
Yeah, it's this is like I like to show more. There's so many others, emotional and spiritual, miraculous stories.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Healing.
It's interesting though because the physical I think is it's easier to measure, right? And so it's easier for people to quantify a
Yeah,
change that way. So yeah, that's a good example to share. Thank you for that.
yeah.
So
And I just want to kind of
yeah.
underneath what happened with that is like as a moral of that story
Uh-huh.
is what happened is that she like relaxed so deeply in the Yoga Nidra. There's such a depth of relaxation and released the stress that she was holding about her relationship. That
Mm,
she went into that deeply receptive place, an open place. And then the energy that is inside the body that has its own intelligence.
hmm.
It went because she let go of the holding and
Yeah.
tension in her body, that energy released and it went straight to where it was needed.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
body has this mechanism of knowing how to heal itself. And that was
Right.
example with
And that it
her.
wants to do that. And it
Yeah,
will when we kind of get out of the way.
exactly. That's it.
Yeah, that's amazing. Very interesting. So I do want to jump back into our topic about rediscovering love. So the title of our session today is the three secrets to rediscovering love. And I'm very curious if you will share with us what these three secrets are. I think a lot of people tuning in are hoping that they will hear what the secrets are. So if you wouldn't mind sharing that with us and how they can be applied in our daily lives and how that can help us to have a deeper connection with ourselves and everyone around us, that would be amazing.
Absolutely, yes. So the first secret is actually what Yoga Nidra helps us um, experience. That first secret is to have a disidentification from our thoughts.
Hmm.
It's because in Yoga Nidra we create that space between our being and the thoughts that are moving through us.
Hmm.
When we create that distance, we're able to not believe in those thoughts. We don't need to fight them. We don't need to erase them, but we just can watch them.
Hmm.
And whenever that inner critic, that self-punishing voice comes in and says, "You're not good. Who do you think you are?" All of those voices, that critical voices, we can just let them pass. Imagine that you are the sky and you can just let the clouds that are those thoughts pass through.
Hmm.
And it comes with practice. When we're able
Right.
to consistently take that back seat approach and be the sky, then we don't need to fight with our thoughts.
Hmm.
That's the first secret.
That's a
To
great secret.
disidentify. If we can just decide that we're not the thoughts, the
Hmm.
thoughts are just the clouds moving through us. And
Hmm.
it's a program. Somebody downloaded that program. Like imagine like computers, there's a
Right.
program, and we
Mhm.
can also deactivate that
Yeah.
program. Or we don't have to
Uninstall.
believe that that we're that program.
Right. Okay. So that's a good first secret. And I can imagine that as we learn how to do that, it saves us a ton of energy, right? Like that energy drain that's always going with paying attention to those thoughts and fighting those thoughts or trying to counter those thoughts or letting those thoughts kind of determine our beliefs and our behavior. So great
Yeah,
time saver there as well.
great
Okay.
time.
So
Yes,
yeah.
great energy. You pointed to something very important. It saves a lot of energy because those thoughts take away energy from our well-being.
Hmm.
Just like with that example with the tooth, when
Hmm.
she was busy with the thoughts, the energy wasn't going into healing the body
Hmm.
and experience of joy. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Mhm.
Okay. All right. And so what are the other two secrets? We want all the secrets, Yulia.
The second secret is how to use the breath. The
Okay.
breath is the secret, is that the breath has the ability to bring us back to ourselves.
Hmm.
That whenever we remember and catch ourselves, that moment when we feel lost in our thoughts or lost in stress, we can just take a pause.
Hmm. Yeah.
And
Yeah. Okay.
yeah,
And remembering that the breath is the bridge, like you said. I love
the
that.
breath.
Breath is a
Yeah.
bridge. Okay. And what's the third secret?
The third secret is to, we haven't touched on that yet. It's understanding that we have a precious inner child within us. Each person has actually many different facets of an inner child. And it's the part of whenever we get critical or self punishing, judging ourselves, to recognize that there is a part of ourselves that is present, that all that part of ourselves wants is to be loved.
Mm.
She or he wants to be loved, wants to be cherished, wants to be understood.
Hmm.
And if we can, this is big part of the work I do with trauma healing, is to connect and heal the inner child. And
Mm.
I like to just even hold my hands on my heart and just ask myself, I hear you, I'm with you. just even imagining and seeing a picture of yourself as a little girl, or
Mm-hmm.
whenever you're having a hard time, just asking, what is the part of me having hard time right now? How old are you? What do you look like?
Mm-hmm.
What do you really asking that part of ourselves? What do you need?
Mm-hmm.
What do you need right now? Do you need a hug? Do you need to be held? Do you need to be told that you are perfect exactly as you are? That nobody really told you that?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's somebody from the out asking somebody else. It's from another person because those traumatic experiences and disconnection happened in relationship with another
Mm-hmm.
person most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Having a correction with another person is very helpful, whether it's in the group or with a close friend or therapist or breath worker,
Mm-hmm.
coach, having that connection with another person so that the inner child can be validated from another person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's
And
really
also
interesting.
and also from yourself, both
Mm-hmm.
from the outside, but also you being now a responsible, kind, compassionate adult who can reach out to the inner child and offer that support.
Mm-hmm. I can definitely see how at the beginning of that process, like in the beginning of that the healing of the trauma, like having an external person that's a support that can verbalize that whatever needs to be said to that, hurt inner child would be like a really supportive first step to getting to where then we ourselves can do that as well.
Yes.
Yeah, so
Mm,
kind of like a stepping stone to being able to
exactly.
provide that for our own selves. So that's all super amazing and really powerful. And I'm so glad that you've been here to share all of that with us. Um, I do want to just, I know we're getting so close to the end of our time, and I know that there's so much more we could talk about, but I want
Mhm.
to make sure that everybody remembers to grab that free gift at the link on your speakers page. And then did you have any last thoughts or things that you want to share with us before we do wrap up today? Any last
Mm,
ideas or
hmm.
suggestions or input or reminders for us?
Let me see if I can. My heart wants to say something. Yeah, I would just invite every one of you to be gentle with yourself because
Mm,
the world can be very tough and rough, and there's a lot of animosity and hardship, and inviting yourself to be gentle, to be
mm,
gentle. I think this lack of self-love comes from being really hard on ourselves. Most people are very hard on themselves.
yeah.
So thinking, I want to be the stand that you can be gentle. You can be gentle and bring more understanding to the feelings that you have.
Mm,
Yeah. And
yeah.
feel it really comes with feeling. I
Mm,
think a lot of times most people don't really even know how they feel.
mhm,
And that gentle approach allows people to have that a little bit more space to feel. And it's okay to feel everything. Maybe last thing I would say that all emotions and all feelings are important.
yeah.
I think there are a lot of people who um, put certain emotions that are acceptable and certain emotions and feelings that are not acceptable. So
Mhm,
that bringing your compassion that all feelings, including anger and fear and shame and guilt, they're all part of us and
mhm,
they're all important.
yeah. Yeah, that's a really great reminder. And just having that compassion for ourselves and that acceptance. And yeah, so excellent. Well, I appreciate you, Yulia. Thanks so much for being here with us today, for sharing everything that you have. Definitely am excited to check out that free gift for myself and try some of that
Yeah.
Yoga Nidra. So thank you for that. I appreciate you
Good.
sharing that with us. And for our listeners, thanks so much for being here with us. Thank you for joining us in the You Are the Love Story series. And I hope that you will continue to check in and catch the rest of the interviews as well. Thanks again, Yulia.
Thank you, Jessica.